Welcome back to Alberta PrimeTime. Still ahead tonight, are we washing away friendly germs in the fight against flu bugs? We're discussing hand sanitizers on the Vocal Point with our Thursday health panel. But first, the changing face of Albertans in need.
The 2009 Hunger Report shows an alarming 61% spike in the number of people turning to Alberta food banks this year over last. The surge is even worse in certain communities. And there's more. Many of the new needy have jobs. The number of employed Albertans using food banks is twice the national average. Can our food banks keep up with the demand? Which Alberta cities and towns are faring worst? And will our food banks get enough support during this crucial holiday fundraising season to help them feed newly desperate Albertans all year long?
And with us tonight to bring perspective from the front lines, Richard Lesueur, the Resource Development Coordinator for Alberta Food Banks, an organization representing more than 100 food banks and hamper programs across our province. Also, Marjorie Benz, Executive Director of the Edmonton Food Bank. And in Calgary tonight, Captain Pam Goodyear, Divisional Secretary for the Salvation Army in Alberta. Welcome to Alberta Primetime, everyone.
Thank you.
Richard, I'd like to start with you. What are you seeing right now at food banks across the province, numbers-wise? In the HungerCount 2009 report, I know we got some horrible numbers.
The numbers are very astonishing. From last year in Alberta, we're up over almost 54,000 people. So that works out to 61% increase in food bank usage in Alberta. That's the biggest number that we're concerned about. There are some other numbers that we're worried about too. 78% of food banks have increased their clientele this year, for instance.
In fact, we have a board as you talk. We'll just show our viewers some of those numbers. I know as well, 43% of the people using food banks are, you can see there, are children. It's heartbreaking.
Yes, it is. And it's, well, that's heartbreaking. You say it best.
Yeah.
We're very, very frustrated.
Because it's what you do all the time, and to see the trend get worse. Pam, are these numbers along the lines of what you're seeing firsthand in Calgary and Edmonton in particular, also maybe rural towns, small towns? How do things compare regionally?
Absolutely. In fact, it's right across the country for many of the Salvation Army food banks. The other challenge is that we're also seeing a decrease in donations in, 75% of our food banks.
Wow. I know 70% rise in use in Edmonton, 80% rise in food bank use in Calgary. So if donations are going down, that's a bit of a double whammy for you. Marjorie, there's more to this even than these concerning numbers, isn't there? Who is walking through the doors now? There's some changes there, isn't there?
Yes, and I think, well, the stats tell one part of the story. We also have to recognize that behind those stats are real individuals and families in need. And we're seeing more people that are working, that are still using and needing food banks. We're also seeing increased number of people who've lost their job in 2009 or hours cut back. And behind every stat, I'm always hesitant to draw a stereotype of somebody who needs a food bank, but unfortunately anyone can lose a job, anyone can have a family breakup, anyone can have ill health, and unfortunately that's the society we live in, and it's compounded with an economy that's a little bit softer than it has been.
Richard, is it fair to say that this recession is hitting Albertans worse than other Canadians?
In some fashion, yes, I would say that. The aspect that our economy was flying so high and it's dropped so far, so fast, that it's caught a lot of people unawares.
So they bought the houses, they bought the cars, now they've got the payments, no job.
They're overextended, and now they're in real difficulty. As Marjorie said, we have a lot of new people utilizing food banks, people that never thought that they would use them, and also they were donors before, and now they're clients, and it makes it really difficult.
And they have kids, too.
They have kids.
I have kids, and the thought of them going hungry, it breaks my heart. Pam, what needs to happen here? Obviously, you're looking for Albertans who are able, individuals, to donate. What about companies? What about lenders? What about government? What needs to happen here now that we're in pretty dire straits?
I think the reality is that everybody who can needs to dig a little deeper even than they did before. You know, we always talk about with our kettle campaign, you know, toss in a loonie, but actually throw in a toonie. So it's $1 for yourself and $1 for someone else who can't give. As Richard mentioned, there are those people that were our donors into food banks, and they're now our clients. In Edmonton alone, we saw an increase of 2,500 new clients last year.
Wow. Marjorie, you've got competition too. 'Tis the season, right? All of the charities are out there. How much does that hurt you? Should there be better coordination between the charities? Add to that, it's lean times. Companies are pulling back on their giving.
Right. Well, with our organization, we're a central warehouse, and we collect and pool food for over 160 agencies, churches, and food depots. And I think there's a lot of work that's being done collaboratively with agencies. I think sometimes the community doesn't understand those relationships and that important work that's happening, because an agency may be dealing with one aspect of that family's crisis while we're dealing with the food piece of it. And so we try to work together. There is a lot of work to be done in our community to deal with some of these issues, so it's important that we engage the public in their contributions of either food, money, or time to help not only food banks but other community organizations at this time.
Right, and I know you've got a particular struggle because the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce has had to back out of the Bright Nights Festival, which accounted to up to 15% of your funding. That hurts. Richard, give us a gauge, if you can, of how significant and crucial it is to give this fundraising season, this festive Christmas season, because it's the big push, it's the time of the year, but it's got to last you folks all year, doesn't it?
It does last a long time. Typically, Christmas campaigns will last, and Marjorie can work with this as well, but Christmas campaigns will last until March, perhaps April, depending on. And
you mean what's given to
what's
you?
Given.
So it runs out by spring?
Yeah, it does last because people can be very generous at Christmas. However, I don't anticipate that happening this year because the demand is so high. And people must remember that hunger doesn't stop after Christmas.
Right.
It goes on all the time. So it's really important to just continue.
Okay. But Pam, give us some advice. If people want to help out, cash, food donations, volunteering their time, what's the best way to give right now for food banks? What do you need most?
For food banks, I think the easiest answer is to do the cash donations if possible. You know, in some of our locations in Lethbridge, for example, they have to buy 70% of their product that they distribute in the food bank. And so we need the funds to be able to go and buy those extras. There's just not enough in the actual food donations coming in.
Okay, and Marjorie, in Edmonton, would you agree? Or are you looking for something different?
Well, certainly we're always looking for contributions of the three key things: the volunteer time, food, and money. Money is very workable for organizations because they can target buy and really maximize that donor dollar. There is a lot to be said about engaging children. You mentioned your own children. Children recognize what hunger would mean to another child, and so it is an opportunity to engage children by making a contribution of food too. So all of it is appreciated, and I think there's some really important pieces of work that need to be acknowledged, that hunger just isn't seasonal, or it just takes a break in January, those types of things. That the work of organizations like Salvation Army or the Food Bank, they're ongoing all year round. So think of us in January and February as well. And that poverty and hunger are complex, and I think that's what's really important. We talked earlier in the program about HungerCount and that report done by Food Banks Canada. These issues are complex, so they need to... So
don't stereotype.
Yeah, and we do need to engage governments and other decision makers in those solutions over time as well.
Right. Okay, and we want to just quickly mention for you as well, this was even news to our panelists just coming in here today. Concordia University in Edmonton, Alberta, has just announced today that they will be setting up a food bank on campus. That's how serious the problem is, and they're not the first school in our province to do that. We thank all of you for your insight today. Richard Lesueur from Alberta Food Banks, Marjorie Benz from the Edmonton Food Bank, and Captain Pam Goodyear from Salvation Army Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Up next tonight, our Thursday Vocal Point panel on health. Is there such a thing as too much hand washing? We'll find out when Alberta Primetime returns.